looking back, I'm just like, how did I get myself in that situation? Like, so naive, so stupid, considering that I have had a bit of experience.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Webdelics podcast, where we're on a journey to find out the truth about plant medicine and psychedelics, get rid of the myths, and change the narrative. I'm your host, Scott Mason, and with us today is an extraordinary guest, the one and only Mattha Busby. He's an accomplished journalist with an incredible story to tell, and I cannot wait to share it with you. Mattha, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, yeah, thanks very much for having us, Scott. We had to rearrange this one time before, and then I even put it down incorrectly in my diary, so super glad we made it and grateful for yours and your team's patience. I guess I'm a journalist. I just came back from living in Mexico for 2 years, where I really got into reporting on psychedelics. I enjoy meditation, yoga, briefly trained as a massage therapist, and now I'm back living in England, and yeah, looking forward to what the future has in store, beginning with this podcast today.
Thank you. And considering everything that you have accomplished in your life, I recommend anyone look up Mattha's bio. It's impressive. And what you're doing right now, I'm excited to find out what the future holds for you as well. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, yeah, so much for the generous introduction. Really looking forward to it.
Thank you. Now, the theme of the day is, what if I have a bad trip? To give this a little context, Mattha, as those who have been following this podcast from the beginning know, I'm not originally from the psychedelic world. In fact, the whole story arc of this podcast so far has involved me learning about it, just as the audience is as well. And after having heard so many personal stories, taken in the science, and really thought about the implications of the psychedelic renaissance for the future of our culture and of our society itself, I've decided, particularly in light of my own history of personal trauma, that taking an actual step, not just as a podcast host, but as a real human being into the world of psychedelics, is one I want to make. However, I know that I am not alone when contemplating what's to come next, in my fear that if I work with a shaman and have a journey, that it will end up being a bad one. Now, that's not something that we've discussed a lot on this show so far, but news stories or just conversations that I've had with folks that I've met here or there occasionally raise scenarios in which people have gone, let's say, on an international trip for an ayahuasca journey and ended up in a horrible state, end up devastated, or end up feeling like in a way they can't come back, or that the experience wasn't this uplifting, wonderful, healing turnaround that so many other people seem to have. And so you, when we met, indicated that you had had such an experience and were willing to share it candidly. And so this is going to be a discussion that, in a way, perhaps everyone who listens to or watches this show has been waiting for from the very beginning. And it's pivotal for any of us to truly understand and have credibility as individuals who speak within the psychedelic and plant medicine space. But before we get into that, Mattha, how did you come into the whole psychedelics world in the first place?
I may have mentioned this before on a podcast, but basically I was traveling South America with an ex-girlfriend, shout out to Jocelyn, and yeah, we met up in Bolivia, traveled for a couple of weeks, and we got to Peru, And she was just like one afternoon, do you want to do it? With kind of like a bit of a knowing sort of air about her speech. And I was just kind of like, yeah, sure. And then a couple hours later, it struck me like, wait, what was she talking about? So I asked her about it, and she told me ayahuasca. And I was thinking, what the hell is this? So I kind of told her, but kind of like wanted to play it cool and be like, yeah, ayahuasca, sure. And then, I told her I didn't know what she was talking about eventually. And I read a couple articles, but yeah, didn't get a particularly deep understanding of what it is. And yeah, before we know it, in a couple of weeks' time after that, we were in Iquitos, the largest city unconnected by road in the jungle of Peru. And we ended up, getting introduced to a female Quechua medicine woman, about 5-hour boat ride from Iquitos. And we sat in a ceremony together.
How was it? How did it end up changing your life? Or did it change your life at all?
At the time, I was a bit kind of underwhelmed. The experience did leave me with two abiding thoughts or lessons, just somewhat vaguely. The importance of my own health and the importance of my relationship with my family. That was super, super clear. But yeah, I'm not going to lie. I was totally unprepared for the experience. And when we were in Iquitos, I had a crazy night. And this was 9 years ago. Occasionally, if there were no other drugs around, I would take some cocaine. So I did quite a lot of cocaine that night. Wow. Obviously, dreadful preparation for an ayahuasca ceremony 5 or 6 or 7 days later. I can't remember exactly. I think it was about a week. So yeah, maybe that blocked aspects of my experience. But yeah, other folks there had really, really, really profound experiences that, have held them in good stead.
Well, that was your first experience. It was a little bit underdramatic, yet you stayed in the psychedelic space and continued to journey forward as a psychonaut. Is that not true?
I mean, eventually, I wasn't so interested in the whole thing at the time. Then, it must have been 4 or 5 years later. I remember after an electronic music festival, techno, I felt terrible. I felt so bad. I'd drunk so much tequila. I'd done all the drugs. I felt like shit, man. So then, I just tapped more into the people I knew that were doing healing work. And I got invited to Hape, the tobacco snuff ceremony. And from there, just got more interested in, plant medicines, shamanic healing methods, not necessarily psychedelic. And it kind of went from there. And I must add, pretty much haven't done cocaine since then. Awful, awful thing.
Wow. And so, first of all, I've got to say, I love electronic music. I'm glad to know that you do too.
I do when I'm not overdoing it and taking cocaine at the same time as MDMA, which is the stupidest thing ever. They're contraindicatory. It just fucks up the whole thing.
Well, I've got to say, so far, I've been pretty tame with my electronic music obsession. I mostly just do it in my apartment with my earphones on and maybe my overactive personal imagination. But I will grant what you're saying. I have no doubt that that's true. As you got deeper and deeper into your psychedelic journey, though, not all of your experiences were healing. And not all of them were as anodyne as that first one that you had in Peru, right? Because in particular, you mentioned to me during our pre-show that one experience was transformative in a way that was different than the others.
Yeah, I wrote about this for Jules Evans's Challenging Psychedelic Experiences Substack a few months ago. And it was actually only in October. So this time last year, around about, a little bit longer ago. And really, looking back, I'm just how did I get myself in that situation? So naive. so stupid, considering that I have had a bit of experience in the space and with myself in terms of inner work and stuff. But yeah, I was basically living on the coast of Mexico, and there were ceremonies happening quite often, and I would always be like, nah, I'm not really down. Like, certainly don't need to like do intense trips all the time or regularly. Absolutely not. And secondly, very transient community. Most of the people coming through didn't really live there, so they would just kind of like set up shop for a minute, do a couple of ceremonies, then carry on. And I'm obviously a massive advocate of serious integration work. So that can involve, one-on-one sessions with a therapist afterwards, or group sessions, or a certain personal practice. And I just didn't feel that, where I was living at the time was conducive to all of that, or that the people offering the medicine were indeed kind of catering for all of that. But long story short, I was beginning to see a friend, like in a romantic way. Nothing had really happened, but there were like big sparks, and I think we'd kissed once. And like I got invited to take photos at a retreat, and I thought it was just a mycology retreat. That's how it's sold. This is my naivety again. And it was like 5 days, and I could participate and eat the food. And at the time, I didn't really have much journalism work. That was at the time I was training to be a massage therapist as well. And
Gotcha.
So I'll go into the jungle and do this retreat, take the photos. I did it. It was all good. Ended up being like a mushroom ceremony, but it was really good. But it was basically this girl and 2 other facilitators that were way more experienced than her. And so when she said that she was organizing another one like 3 weeks later, I was kind of like, all right, cool. I'll come check it out. And it wasn't like the one before. It was her and like a different crew of 2 other girls who I think were way more inexperienced than the other 2 that she'd put on the ceremony before. And it just totally imploded, dude.
Wow. That sounds scary, especially in light of the fact that the first ceremony that you had been to with at least one of the facilitators had been a positive one, even though you, as I understand it, hadn't really planned on having engagement at that level when you went into that particular retreat. It sounds like still there was no reason that I'm hearing so far to believe that if they invited you to a second one that you should stay away. But what gave you a sense once you were there that the other 2 facilitators didn't have the appropriate level of experience? Was it just your gut, or were there behaviors or things that they said or didn't say?
I mean, firstly, we turned up and there was half a peyote strewn on the kitchen table, which personally strikes me as kind of disrespectful to the medicine and the people that have safeguarded it, right? So all these years. And then, the space wasn't really ready. They were just kind of doing it at a friend's place, his kind of eco farm. Then, we set up, we're sitting down, and the 2 other girls come around and introduce themselves. To be honest, like, they struck me as cool. Maybe the one younger one, who's the girlfriend of the guy whose land it was, did, not give me like a great feeling, but I didn't know that she would get so involved in the ceremony. Apparently she was supposed to be singing, but she ended up kind of facilitating. It gets underway. We drink it's like a cacao mixed with mushrooms. Tasted really bad. I don't know if they messed up the cacao because they were doing it on the fire, but really, really tasted bad. And put my eye mask on. Got one right here, although this wasn't the one I used. Waited.
I love that you're showing that, actually, because these masks have come up at various points during the podcast. And for those who are watching the video, it's nice to actually see what they look like. If people's imaginations are like mine, I could think of anything. So thank you for that.
This one's got like kind of beads in it.
Oh, wow.
This one's got sand. This one's really nice. Like the feeling, just like when you're lying down. But this one's the softest. This is really, really soft. I like that. But it doesn't give you the same relaxation, though, around the eye sockets. But different horses, different courses.
And if I could just, before you move on, for those who are merely listening to the episode, and so you can get a sense as to what's happening, Mattha is showing us some eye masks that basically look like the sort of mask you might put over your eyes on an airplane, but they're much higher end. And they have some different decorations on them, and they seem like they're thicker and, as he's describing, much more ornate and designed for the purpose of this sort of experience that you're about to tell us more about.
Yeah, so I was lying down. The mushrooms are coming on. It's really strong. And then suddenly this girl's like, "Can I touch you?" And I was like, yeah. With some like trepidation, but
Yeah.
the mushrooms were coming on. The whole idea, right, is it kind of makes one a little bit more like hyperplastic, maybe more agreeable. So maybe there was something inside of me that didn't want to like reject this seemingly kind offer. And so she starts doing energy work on me, which in hindsight is just totally inappropriate. Like it isn't supposed to happen until a point in which the participant really maybe needs some like physical touch or attention, or has some kind of, in inverted commas, blockage. And only when they request it. You know? But anyway, she cracks on, and she's moving some stuff around, and kind of feels nice at some level. It's almost like Reiki. It's relaxing.
And she's touching you all over when she's doing this energy work. Like, what exactly does that mean in this context, or what was she referring to?
I mean, it's basically putting the hands just above the skin. I think she was going all over my body. I had my eyes closed. I couldn't see.
Right.
Pretty much going all over my body. I mean, either very slight touch, or just hands just floating above the body. And yeah, it's supposed to just promote circulation, I suppose.
Yeah.
But then she gets to my neck and then falls down crying. Right? And it did something in my neck, man. Like, I was like semi-choking, but I don't know what that was. It was pretty cosmic.
I have to interrupt. When she says she fell down, what do you mean by that? I mean, did she literally like fall down on the floor somehow, or what is that referring to?
Yeah, I think she must have been crouched over. She crouched over me, and then she just fell backwards onto the floor, sobbing.
Okay. Wow, sobbing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, dude. I don't know what she was bringing up. Maybe she couldn't handle my energy, you know?
I guess not. But you're in a vulnerable state. Were you aware that she was sobbing when this happened?
Yeah, it was audible. It's audible, and then the main girl, the one that I'd had a bit of a blossoming, somewhat until then at least, relationship, came over and gave her like a pep talk, all totally audible, and then she kind of goes back to work on me after a minute or something, moves whatever it was on my neck. Thank you very much.
Did your neck start to feel better at that point?
Yeah. I was starting. Yeah, it moved whatever was in my neck, and I went back to being super high from the mushrooms and relaxed.
Okay.
And then she carried on for a sec, and then she was like, and then I could feel something, right? That then there was like another layer, and then as that I felt that, she was like, "Can I go deeper?" I was like, no. And this will sound crazy, but I'd sat with the iboga medicine about 3 months before.
Yes.
And there was something inside of me, and I haven't told this before, that was something like the iboga spirit. I mean, it could easily just been a figment of my imagination in such a state, especially, but there was something inside of me that was just like, do not let them go any further into, like, you know, your realm, dude.
Interesting. And so if I'm putting two and two together right, you had that prior experience in which there was a boundary that the subconscious or the medicine or something was saying, don't cross. And then you presumably during the psilocybin ceremony were approaching where that boundary was when she asked you if she can go further. Am I understanding this right?
I mean, no, I think who knows, dude? Like,
Yeah.
you can get pretty trippy with all this stuff. Like, maybe it was just my ego. Maybe I don't want to be healed, you know. But no, it felt just like the spirit of the iboga plant telling me, do not let these crazy motherfuckers touch you anymore, dude.
Gotcha. And so what happened next?
Then the guy next to me, whose land it was kind of like shrieking and making big ass groans and stuff. And to be fair, it did seem like he might have actually needed some attention. So yeah, the girls basically started doing an exorcism on him, and I was watching. Yeah, and then his dog, and he had a fucking like pit bull, started going haywire because his owner was making all of these sounds and getting all this attention from these women.
Okay. So, Mattha, I just have to say, I've had many people describe their experiences on this show so far, and we're going to have many more. But congratulations, because I'm getting the most vivid imagery of any experience ever as you're talking. I actually really do feel like I'm there. But okay, so you're having the spirit of the iboga tell you not going any further. This kind of, when she's asking you to go deeper, you don't need to. Shortly around this time, someone in the same room as you start screaming. A dog is actually sitting in the same room as those within a ceremony, kind of going crazy. You are in a vulnerable state. What was going through your mind, and how, what? I just don't even know what question to ask.
I'm a big dog lover. I tried to like restrain the dog.
While you were under the influence of the
I tried to like restrain the dog and rub his belly, but he just wanted to just scope out the perimeter. So the guy's girlfriend was just like, let him loose. So I did, but all of this stuff, like, you shouldn't be talking in a ceremony between each other. It's just like it was crazy. So they do the exorcism on him, like kind of pulling out whatever's going down. Like, God bless him,
I gotta interrupt again. So literally this is like total Linda Blair, sort of like where they're calling out demons from within this person.
Pretty much. I mean, they weren't really saying spells and stuff out loud. It was more motions with the hands, like trying to kind of expel whatever was up in there.
Wow. Okay. I'm not known for being at a loss of words, Mattha. But you've shut me up. So just please tell us what happened next.
Yeah, I mean, look, like I'm like, on some level I'm a pretty rationalist, materialist. And then on another level, I'm open to the possibilities of the world. And there was this BBC Three documentary about this priest in Argentina who does exorcisms, and he's clearly elicits a reaction without any psychedelics, right? Like elicits some sort of reaction from these folks. Like whatever he's doing elicits a reaction. So who knows? Haven't seen the film though. But yeah, so they kind of like finished with him, and I put my eye mask back on and just tried to just go back to my own business, which is the whole point.
Yeah.
And yeah, must have been another 10 minutes goes past, and I can just feel someone above me. Take off the eye mask again, and I just see the girl, the main girl, above me like a puppet master, like going pulling on, I don't know, some sort of cords from my body, because I could feel something, right? And yeah, I took my eye mask and I'm like, what are you doing? And she just stood there looking totally deranged. It turned out all of those guys took at least 2 grams of the mushrooms each, which is like way above a space holding dose. And they were really strong mushrooms. They were lab grown in Denver, and it was like a hybrid of a bunch of different cubensis strains, which I also not sure I'd recommend. Like, I think just the natural just single strain. Yeah, you can't. can't argue with that really. But she's just looking all crazy. So am I probably if I saw myself in the mirror, no doubt. And she's just like, meet me, and like standing there as if like I need to just like hug her or embrace her or something. And I was like, the last thing I want to do is like get any closer to you. So I was like, I'm not really feeling it. And I just turn and there's like a hill. I scramble up the hill because we're outside in like the clearing. Near
Gotcha.
so
this was an actual hill, not it was an actual hill and not in your mind then.
Yeah. No, it was a real hill. I like scraped my legs up on some cactus on the way up, and then got to the kitchen and tried to catch some respite there.
First of all, thank you for sharing all of that. It is startling. It's attention getting, but like you said, it's important. One of the things that you touched on before you actually began the story of what happened to you, but is becoming more and more a part of the public's conscious, at least here in the United States and in Western Europe, is this idea of these retreats being somewhere that you can go to, usually in Latin America, and just sort of have a casual experience that might change your life or might be fun and interesting, and you then move on without real consequence. And in fact, you touched on that briefly when you talked about the ceremonies that were basically tourist activities that were in the area that you were living in at the time. And so let's move a little bit beyond for a second into what happened to you, although there is one thing I want to get back to with regards to that a little bit later, into what this means from your perspective for those of us that are entering the psychedelic world and may be considering some of these more casual or less regulated experiences that are allegedly curated. But after hearing this, I'm becoming aware they can be curated by anybody. What takeaways would you give to us about that in particular?
I mean, it's really tricky, dude. There's not much of a system out here to report information because it's only just entering a legal environment where it does exist in places like Mexico. It's unregulated. Jamaica, a bit more like there's more legal framework there, but it's definitely not legal. It's just not illegal. And I've been to some really great like high-end retreats, and I've not always had the best experiences either. I've been blessed to be able to attend, and I'm not sure, with the exception of one place that I would really recommend, I wouldn't necessarily recommend the others. So it's really, really tricky. I think there's no easy answers here. I don't think necessarily the clinical model is the only approach. I don't think that the community shamanic model is the only approach. Really, I would hesitate to give advice to folks, but just, hold tight and don't do it unless you're extremely confident that they're good folks and you've received, an endorsement of the place by a couple people whose opinions you respect. The problem is here, though, is that most people are totally psychedelically naive. So it's like most people don't have even a benchmark of what's good and what's not. Like they might have a good experience, but then it's like if you haven't got a reference point of what's like a really, really top experience, then how do you know? And a lot of these things are very subtle as well, and might not come up, like some of the issues one might encounter in a ceremony that might leave an effect. It might only sort of manifest much later down the line. I mean, I just worked on this Vice documentary that just got released about the toad venom scene in Tulum, and that does a good job of showing how this industry that's bringing about possibly the most intense experiences of people's lives is just a total ramshackle sort of disparate network of people who've mostly come into the medicine through their own healing from difficult places. So it's really tricky, but there's a lot of positive things there that folks can potentially access, but yeah, it's really, really, really tricky. And yeah, there's a lot of cowboys and a lot of other people that, are got good hearts, but really shouldn't be doing what they're doing.
Well, and one other thing that I'm thinking about, even hearing what you have to say, and with the constraints that you have put around any advice that you feel comfortable giving, is nonetheless, if you're in a situation, and I'd just love to hear whether you even agree with this, and something begins to feel really weird and really weird in a way that makes one uncomfortable, uh, perhaps it's best to just say this isn't right and walk away, even if you've spent money, or even if you're in a place where you might not know a lot of people. As I'm hearing this, it would seem intuitively like the smart decision. And I'm not going to say I've made only smart decisions in my own life, so I'm not coming from any sort of place on high. But I might be to nonetheless just swallow whatever it is that you have put yourself through to get there and walk away rather than risk this sort of thing. But do you agree with me, or do you think I'm being too severe, or is my takeaway totally?
If you're not feeling it, listen to your body, man. I just spoke to this guy yesterday, actually, who paid 11,500. He was addicted to opioids and paid 11,500 US, as I say, to go to his Ibogaine clinic.
Yeah.
And yeah, the day of his treatment, the dude didn't turn up. And then he wanted to do it like the next day.
Oh my.
So, and consider the fact that the guy's having like serious withdrawal symptoms and everything, right? Like, it's important that they stick to the schedule if they want to get this guy off of prescription drugs. So anyway, the dude who's running the clinic just didn't turn up and wouldn't let any of the other nurses touch the Ibogaine. So yeah, the dude said he basically just walked away. And I mean, he was wealthy though, so didn't really, like, he could walk away from and not try and get into the bother.
Yeah, go ahead, please finish.
Yeah, no, the bother of trying to extract the money out of the situation as well. He just walked away and found another clinic.
But you're going as to a good point, which is that people may feel reluctant to walk away from something if they have invested a lot of their resources and they're not wealthy. Let's say if I paid $11,000, Mattha, your homeboy would have been crying. I probably would have walked away, but I would have been crying. That being said, the importance of walking away, at least as I'm interpreting this, it goes as to placing appropriate value on your mind and on your mental health, because that's something no amount of money can recover. And the question then that leads me to ask you is, well, let's say despite all of your precautions, despite all of your due diligence, you've heard raves about this place that you're going from a number of different credible people, and you've met with the person and it's not weird, and they're experienced, all this sort of stuff. It's professional. There aren't dogs walking around the clinic or the environment that you're in. And nonetheless, you still have a bad experience. How do you move forward from that if you're someone who has gone through it? Do you have any recommendations, advice at all? It sounds like you, for instance, went to see a therapist.
Yeah, I mean, I reached out to this dude that I'd worked with before, and yeah, we did some integration therapy. Actually, like how it went was I didn't really go into the experience. I told him what happened once, and he didn't even respond. It was just then cracking on, like, what are your goals? What is it you really want in life? And just focusing on that. I mean, I guess maybe in different situations, other people might want to just delve into whatever had happened a bit more. But yeah, for me, I was just like straight off the bat, even though they kind of gaslighted me the next morning, and a few of the guys at the ceremony, like in the next days, like messaged me and were kind of like, yo, dude, what the fuck? But I knew what was up. And eventually, that, like, once they all got sober as well, they pretty much recognized. They sent me voice notes saying, like, yeah, that was some crazy shit, dude. Like, sorry you had to go through that for us. But yeah, I mean, integration therapy, just one-on-one, just to have someone to hold you to account and check in and focus on your goals and give you some tools, and yeah, a bit of like some different meditations or different other kind of woo-woo stuff. yeah, it could be helpful. I don't know. Might not be as well. You've got to find the right person, as I say again.
How did you recover from this experience, or have you recovered? If it was me, I would have felt like I had just been, well, like you've described, through an experience that's hard to believe it's even true really happened. And particularly if you are someone that has been on a healing journey or who has had to recover from traumas in your life, it is one of those things where, okay, now this has happened and it may have rewired parts of your brain while all of this is going on, and yet somehow you have to move forward. If it had been me, for instance, I would not have been able to just, after all of that, just say, okay, let me just take another day off and then get back to work and pretend like nothing happened.
Yeah, I know. I gave like, I literally had to get on my motorbike and drive for like 2 hours, and then I gave a workshop the next afternoon on journalism.
How did you do it? Seriously?
Honestly, I was all right, man. I was obviously a bit shell-shocked, but I was okay. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it wasn't that bad, or maybe it's because I'd already had a bit of experience with psychedelics. Maybe because I've done yoga and meditation, and at that point I was doing quite a lot of yoga and meditation. I was just like, just sort of took it in my stride to an extent. But yeah, I mean, it was probably a bit destabilizing in a way. Yeah, luckily, I think for other people in the same situation, it could have easily been way more destabilizing. I mean, we see the story of this dude who's fucking off-duty pilot, yes, who had a mushroom experience and then had sort of got into a state of derealization. And yeah, was having like an extended sort of bad trip, 48 hours later rather, and pulled the switches on the plane. Yeah. And yeah, the paper's just come out as well. Jules Evans and his team of researchers interviewed like 600 people that had long-term challenging experiences after a trip. So look, this stuff happens, but yeah, obviously there's some risk of observation bias here for me, but yeah, it didn't feel like totally catastrophic for me in my life, but maybe that's just because I tried to nip it in the bud as soon as possible and address it, right, and try and find maybe some positives out of it, the good part of a bad trip.
Well, what I'm about to share, Mattha, isn't nearly the same level of bizarreness, but it does go as to your point. Even in a non-psychedelic context, we never know the state of fragility that someone might be in. So I once had a boss, I may have shared the story on this podcast before, I'm not sure if I have or not, who felt the need to tell me in front of my staff and my colleagues that whenever I opened my mouth and spoke, I sounded so stupid that if she were me, she would just buy a gun, put it in my mouth, and shoot. Now, I happen to be unusually thick-skinned, and so I was able to laugh that off. But as I've thought about that incident in the many years since it's occurred, I can't help but wonder, well, what if I had been someone who'd been considering suicide that day? Or what if I had been someone that was very fragile? I might have done it. And so what you're talking about is really a deep understanding that, and a point that needs to be heard, which is that the states that people might be in can vary dramatically. And we're talking about substances that guests repeatedly on this show have said are not to be trifled with. And you've perhaps given the most potent example I've ever heard and graphically told of why these things are not to be trifled with and why they need to be approached with caution. You're also talking about something that goes as to Webdelics' most fundamental mission, which is to have an honest, credible dialogue about this and not just do empty-headed pom-pom girl sort of cheerleading. So you really brought a dose of reality into the room here, and I appreciate that. If there is one final takeaway that I have from all of this, it is understanding that before I'm go ahead with my decision to go on my first journey, I need to really make sure that the people I'm dealing with are credible, that I have believable testimonials as to their quality, and that if I walk into that room that day and anything is bizarre, yo, thanks to you, Mattha, I don't care. I'm walking away, and I'm certainly not going to be hobbling home on any sort of torn up foot. I appreciate you sharing that, and I'm glad it didn't get infected, that you didn't have to lose it or anything like that. But if you have any last series of words that you want to say for us after everything that you've shared, and I know a lot of this cannot have been easy to share, so thank you for being candid and open in doing so. But if you have any last words, what would those be?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm glad that the stories I've imparted have made an impact on you, and will help you, make more of a responsible choice and have the means to do that as well, right? Like, it's very difficult. I mean, I don't know what the answers are. I mean, you've got regulators in the UK and the US, and still things are real fucked up. And
Yeah.
with food, with the rivers, with what, God knows what, right? So
Yeah.
all I can say is, I think right now folks are super keen to have psychedelic experiences. It's becoming even trendy, and you've got people popping up who mean well, but I really don't think are qualified, in my view, to be facilitating these kind of life-changing journeys for folks. So I would just say, if you're considering it, just hold tight until you're totally sure that it's like the right person. But I don't know necessarily how to make sure that it is the right person. It's super tricky. Like, do you trust the person? Have they got like good reviews? I mean, all of that stuff also is just subject to just hearsay and people not having the means themselves to be able to judge. So it's really tricky. But on the whole, I've definitely had overwhelmingly positive experiences with psychedelics. But there's definitely been a handful of occasions, not least this one, where things haven't been smooth sailing. So just bear that in mind.
Thinking about everything you've said about a baseline, really valuable thing to think about from a public policy perspective. This has been an unexpectedly rich, thought-provoking, eye-opening, and much, much needed discussion. I simply can't thank you enough, Mattha. Mattha, after getting to know you a little bit, I simply, completely keeping it real here, I cannot imagine that people will not want to find out more about you, especially knowing that you host your own podcast and are out there on a whole host of other different platforms and places. Tell us where people who have begun to get to know you can get to know you even better, please. I can hear the audience demanding it right now.
I mean, it could easily go the other way, right? They're just like, whoa, yo. I need to just get back to like whatever bloody Timothy Chalamet is posting. It's like, I just need that vanilla content. But I'm on Instagram, Mattha Mundo, Mattha is the name, and podcast Uncharted Territory, posting like another 10 episodes at the moment for season 2, and looking forward to seeing what happens. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Look, as a host, I have no doubt after featuring you as a guest that podcast is simply awesome. For those of you who have listened to or watched this episode and gotten meaning from it or enjoyed it, make sure that you tell other people about it and leave a 5-star review on your favorite audio platform, as well as a comment on YouTube if you're watching it there. And don't forget to subscribe to us. Now, in future episodes, I'm going to be detailing exactly how I prepare for that first psychedelic journey that I have, particularly in light of everything that I've just heard, and what happens when it finally occurs. We have some extraordinary guests coming up to talk in even more depth about this subject, and it is going to make for riveting discussion. please make sure that you follow us on all of our different social media platforms: Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, as mentioned earlier. Then also go to our website at webdelics.com. That's WEBDELICS.com. Subscribe to our blog and receive our newsletter in your email inbox that contains a whole host of valuable information that's credible and curated as to the world of plant medicine and psychedelics. And then, above all else, make sure that you come back again for yet another episode of the Webdelics podcast.